Hey everybody, welcome to the YS Podcast. It's December and we're having a great time here in San Diego. Did you hear those? I think I heard a bell. I got my wings. Anyways, we want to kick it off to our third segment with Lily Lewin. She's going to share this tip with you about Advent.
Hey, it's week 4 of Advent. We're getting really close to the birth of Jesus. And on Christmas Eve, we light the Christ candle in the center. And one way I've included my whole community, my whole youth group in participating in Advent. Because in my tradition, we always had one family who lit the Advent wreath each week. And I thought that was a little boring. So in years past, I've actually increased the size of my Advent wreath and just used a garland of greenery, and then put some big pillar candles around the table, and then used little tea lights or votives on a tray or a couple of different trays in the center. So then in the beginning of our worship time together, or in our youth group gathering, I've invited everybody to come up and light a tea light in the middle as our being light of the world to the whole world. So to include everyone in being part of Advent, we will all light our own little candles in the middle as the Christ candle. So we become a part of Advent. We're saying that we want to be a part of the waiting, a part of the preparation, and we're willing to participate in the coming of King Jesus. And it's like we are the light of the world with having lots of little candles in the middle. You also can even give out a candle to your students and have them light it each day to think about the season and the preparation of coming of King Jesus. But the fourth candle is the peace candle. It is the angel candle. It's the candle of peace on earth, goodwill to all people. And one of the things that you can do this week in preparation for the coming of Jesus' birth is to get out a map of the world or a globe or even your local newspaper and pray for peace. Use that newspaper as your prayer tool and pray for peace in your city, pray for peace in your town, in your church, and in the wider world. And use the articles in that newspaper, even if you're listening to the news on the radio or on TV, and instead of getting frustrated, use that as an opportunity to pray for peace in those situations, so that you are proclaiming peace on earth, goodwill to all people, just as the angels did. And one last tip. The beautiful thing about the season of Christmas, like I said a couple weeks ago, is that it continues. So the Christmas season in the church year is actually the 25th through the 6th of January. That's where we get the 12 days of Christmas. So you can actually keep celebrating, keep singing Christmas songs, Christmas carols, and rest into the birth of Jesus. And if your students have been out of town or have been crazy and haven't been participating in the Christmas story at all, then retell that Christmas story around January 6th. That's Epiphany. So that's another opportunity to tell the story of Jesus through the eyes of the wise men, because that's when we celebrate the light of the world coming to all people, to the Gentiles who were the wise men. So God bless and have a great Christmas season and celebrate Epiphany for the first time this year.
Man, these fit better last time when I was on that runway shoot with Victoria's Secret. Anyways, we're going to get you off to our devotion today. It comes from one of our authors, Rich Van Pelt.
You know, I'm thinking about an experience that I had early in my own youth ministry experience when I was serving as a volunteer in a small church in New Jersey. And one night we had a rousing game of capture the flag, a bunch of junior high kids, and then we gathered in the church basement where it was the intention of the pastor to do a devotional with all these sweaty, tired, anxious junior high kids. And there was this one particular kid who just was not getting with the program, and the pastor was getting more and more frustrated as time went on. And finally, much to my surprise and actually horror, the pastor pointed to the kid and he said, "Hey, you, get out of here and don't ever come back." Well, I had a lot of respect for the pastor and actually a lot of respect for his ability to connect with kids and love on kids. And so I was dealing with this incredible dissonance as I sat there, and the knot in my stomach just started getting larger and larger. So finally I just kind of slipped out the back to see if I could find the kid, and sure enough, I found him out on the front church steps, sitting against the railing in tears. And being a master of the obvious, I went over to him and said, "Boy, it seems like something's wrong." And he started to cry even more and began to tell me a story that week his mom and dad had announced to the kids that they were going to get a divorce, and he was going to live with his dad, who was leaving the state, and his sister was going to live with mom. And so his world had fallen apart, and what we were seeing at youth group had little to do with any kind of attitude of rebellion or anything like that. It was just a brokenness of spirit. Fast forward several years, I graduated from college and from seminary and had moved to Colorado for a ministry with students out there. And I was invited to speak at a retreat in the mountains, and several churches had gathered for this retreat, and they asked me to speak on the subject, the risk of caring. And so I talked about the risks that God calls us to take if we're going to really be involved in caring for people like Jesus did. And I actually used the story of Mark, how that as a volunteer who didn't really know what he was doing, I just risked going out and sitting next to that kid. What I didn't tell you was I had an opportunity in the process of sitting next to Mark to tell him about Jesus and how Jesus cares for our brokenness. And in a really sweet and simple way, Mark prayed a prayer and he said, "Jesus, I just want to ask you to be the boss of my life." And of course, I as a volunteer, I didn't know a whole lot about follow-up or anything like that. And so I said, "Well, see ya." So I told the story on the retreat, and it was the first night. And in typical fashion, a number of kids lined up after the talk. They wanted to talk about various things. And there was this tall kid in the back of the line, just weeping. And I thought his girlfriend just dumped him or something like that happened. As he finally got up to me, and this is really a true story, he put his hands on my shoulder and he looked in my eyes and he said, "Hi, Rich. I'm Mark. Thanks for caring." He said, "I went home that night and told my mom and dad what happened. And my mom and dad actually gave their lives to Jesus. And we moved as a family to Colorado. We're involved in a church and we're doing great." And I thought at that time, and I've thought many times since then, I'd like to take credit for that. I had very little to do with that, except that maybe I was willing to take a risk and jump in where I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I knew that God cares about broken people. And I guess today I just want to encourage you guys not only to be looking for those opportunities, but when you have that prompting in your gut or in your spirit, don't fall prey to but I'm just a volunteer, or I really don't have a lot of experience in working with hurting kids, but take the risk and watch what God will do.
Thanks for watching the podcast this week. I'm done humiliating myself for this job once and for all. Anyways, I want to invite you to connect with me. You can send me an email at adam@youthspecialties.com, or you can look up me or the next guy that they're going to humiliate on our Facebook group or Twitter or MySpace or whatever else you want. Just connect with us, okay? More importantly, we do want to remind you that what you do matters. It matters greatly to your church, to your senior pastor, to Santa Claus, to everybody else, but most importantly, it matters to the heart of God. Thank you for what you do, and we'll see you next week.